Book of Heaven, Volume 13, Part 1. JMJ. Fiat. May 1st, 1921. The human will casts dissimilarity between creator and creature. For the one who lives in the divine will, everything is harmony. Continuing in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, in the midst of a multitude of people. And up high, there was the Queen Mamma, speaking to that people and crying, so much so that, holding a bunch of roses on her lap, she wet them with her tears. I could not understand anything of what she was saying. I could only see that the people wanted to make tumults, and that the celestial Mamma was praying them, crying, to calm down. Then she detached one rose, and pointing to me in the midst of so many people, she threw it to me. I looked at it. The rose was pearled with the tears of my dear Mamma, and those tears invited me to pray for the peace of the peoples. Then afterwards I found myself together with my sweet Jesus, and I prayed him for the peace of the peoples. And he, drawing me to himself, spoke to me about his most holy will, saying to me, "My daughter, my will contains the creative power, and just as my will gave life to all things, so it has the power to destroy them. Now the soul who lives in my volition also has the power to give life to good and to give death to evil. In the immensity, she finds herself in the past, and wherever there are voids to my glory, offenses not repaired, love not given to me, she fills the voids of my glory. She makes for me the most beautiful reparations, and she gives me love for all. In my will she diffuses herself in the present. She extends to the future centuries, and everywhere and for everyone, she gives me that which creation owes me. In the soul who lives in my will, I hear the echo of my power, of my love, of my sanctity. In all my acts, I hear the echo of her own. She runs everywhere, before me, behind me, and even inside of me. Wherever my will is, there is hers. As my acts multiply themselves, hers also multiply. Only the human will puts disharmony between creature and creator. One single act of human will puts chaos between heaven and earth, and casts dissimilarity between creator and creature. On the other hand, for the one who lives in my will, everything is harmony. Her things and mine harmonize together. I am with her on earth, and she is with me in heaven. One is the interest, one the life, one the will. See, because creation has not moved from my will in anything, the sky is always azure and starry, and the sun is full of light and heat. The whole creation is in perfect harmony. One thing is support of the other. It is always beautiful, fresh, young. It never grows old, nor does it lose one shadow of its beauty. On the contrary, it seems that each day it rises as more majestic, giving a sweet enchantment to all creatures. So would man have been, had he not withdrawn from my will. And so are the souls who live in my will. They are the new heavens, the new suns, the new earth, all flowery, even more varied with beauty and enchantment. May 21st, 1921. Jesus finds rest in the souls who live in his will. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen in my arms, in act of taking rest. I clasped him to my heart, saying to him, "My love, say a word to me. Why are you silent?" And Jesus, "My beloved daughter, rest is necessary to me. After having spoken to you so much, I want in you the first effects of my words. You work, doing what I have taught you, and I shall rest. And when you have put my teachings into execution, I shall come back again to speak to you of higher and more sublime things, to be able to find rest more beautiful in you. And besides, if I do not rest in the souls who live in my will, in whom could I hope for rest? Only the souls who live in my will are capable of giving me rest. The living in my will forms the room for me. The acts done in my will form for me the bed. The repeated acts, the constancy in repeating, are the lullabies, the musics, and the opium to favor my sleep. But while I sleep, I watch over you, in such a way that your will is nothing other than the outpouring of mine, your thoughts the outpouring of my intelligence, your word the outpouring of mine, your heart the outpouring of my heart. So even though you do not hear me speak, there is such dissolving of yourself in me that you do not want, nor think, nor do anything but what I myself want and do. So as long as you live in my will, you can be sure that everything that goes on within you is me. June 2nd, 1921. In coming upon earth, Jesus said almost nothing or very little about his will. I was feeling very oppressed, because they told me that they wanted to print everything that my sweet Jesus had manifested to me about his most holy will. And my anguish was so great that I felt also agitated. And my sweet Jesus in my interior said to me, "Do you want to arbitrate yourself? That's nice. Only because a teacher wanted to dictate a doctrine of his to one pupil, the doctrine cannot be made public, or the good that can be done with it. This would be absurd, and would sadden one's teacher. And besides, of you there is nothing. It is all my doctrine. You have been nothing other than a clerk, and only because I have chosen you. You would want to bury my teachings, and therefore also my glory? But with all this I felt restless, and my always lovable Jesus, coming out from within my interior, surrounded my neck with his arm, and clasping me tightly, told me, "My beloved daughter, calm yourself, and make your Jesus content." And I, "My love, the sacrifice is too hard. At the mere thought that everything that has passed between you and me has to come out, I feel myself dying, and my heart cracks for the pain. If I wrote, it was only to obey, and for fear that you might be displeased. And now look at what a maze obedience is casting me into. My life, have pity on me, and put your holy hand into this." And Jesus, My daughter, and if I want the sacrifice, you must be ready to make it, and must not deny me anything. Now you must know that in coming upon earth, I came to manifest my celestial doctrine, to make known my humanity, my fatherland, and the order that the creature was to have in order to reach heaven. In a word, the gospel. But of my will I said almost nothing, or very little. I almost passed over it, making them understand that the thing about which I cared the most was the will of my Father. Of its qualities, of its height and greatness, of the great goods that the creature receives by living in my volition, I said almost nothing, because the creature, being too much an infant in the celestial things, would have understood nothing. I only taught her to pray, Fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra, so that she might dispose herself to know this will of mine, in order to love it and do it, and therefore receive the gifts it contains. Now, what I was to do at that time, the teachings about my will that I was to give to all, I have given to you. So making them known is nothing other than making up for what I myself was to do while on earth, as the fulfillment of my coming. Don't you want me, then, to fulfill the purpose of my coming upon earth? Therefore let me do. I shall watch over everything, and dispose everything. And you, follow me and be at peace. June 6, 1921. The greatest miracle that God can perform is for a soul to live in his fiat. I was dissolving myself in the holy will of blessed Jesus, and I thought to myself, what one is greater, more varied, more complex, the work of creation or the redeeming work? And my always lovable Jesus told me, my daughter, the redeeming work is greater, more varied and complex than the work of creation. Even more, it is so much greater that each act of the redeeming work is immense seas that surround the work of creation. And the work of creation, surrounded by the redeeming work, remains as nothing other than little rivulets surrounded by the immensely vast seas of the redeeming work. Now the one who lives in my will, who takes my fiat voluntas tua as life, flows within these immense seas of the redeeming work. She diffuses and expands together with them, in such a way as to surpass the very work of creation. Therefore only the life of my fiat can give true honor and glory to the work of creation, because my fiat multiplies, extends everywhere. It has no limits. On the other hand, the work of creation has its limits, nor can it become larger than it is. My daughter, the greatest miracle that my omnipotence can perform is for a soul to live in my fiat. Do you think it is trivial that my will, holy, immense, eternal, would descend into a creature, and putting my will and hers together, I dissolve her in me, and make myself life of the whole operating of the creature, even of the littlest things? So her heartbeat, the word, the thought, the motion, the breath, are of the God living in the creature. She conceals heaven and earth within herself, and in appearance one sees a creature. Greater grace, a prodigy more portentous, a sanctity more heroic than my fiat, I could not give. See, the work of creation is great, The work of redemption is even greater. My fiat, making the creature live in my will, surpasses both one and the other. In fact, in creation my fiat created and put out my works, but did not remain as center of life in the created things. In redemption, my fiat remained as center of life in my humanity, but did not remain as center of life in the creatures. Rather, if their will does not adhere to mine, they render vain the fruits of my redemption. But with my fiat, making the creature live in my will, I remain as center of life of the creature. And therefore I repeat to you, as other times, that my fiat voluntas tua shall be the true glory of the work of creation and the fulfillment of the abundant fruits of the work of redemption. Here is the reason why I want nothing else from you but that my fiat be your life, and that you look at nothing other than my will, because I want to be as center of your life. June 12th, 1921. Jesus finds his life in the soul who lives in his will. Continuing in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus continues to speak to me of his holy will, telling me, "My beloved daughter, birth from my will. I do not want you sky studded with stars. It would please me. I would find my work, but it would not satisfy me, because I would not find myself. Nor do I want you sun, though I would find delight in it. I would find the shadow of my light and of my heat, but not finding my life, I would pass over you. Nor do I want you flowery earth with flowers, plants, and fruits, although it could be pleasing to me, since I would find the breath of my fragrances, traces of my sweetness, the mastery of my creative hand. In some I would find my works, but not my life. Therefore I would pass over everything. I would continue to wander without stopping. To find what? My life. And where shall I find this, my life? In the soul who lives in my will. This is why I do not want you either sky or sun or flowery earth, but center of my will. There, where I find my life, I shall stop and dwell forever. Only then shall I be content. I shall rest not in my work as in creation, but in my own life. Know that your life must be the fiat. My fiat issued you to the light, and like noble queen, carrying the fiat creator in your womb, you must walk the field of life upon the wings of the same fiat, sowing everywhere the seed of my will, to be able to form many other centers of my life upon earth, and then come back into my same fiat in heaven. Be faithful to me, and my will shall be your life, the hand to lead you, the feet to walk, the mouth to speak. In some, it shall take the place of everything. June 20th, 1921. Simile of the Son and the one who lives in the divine will. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus came, but all majesty and love. He took my right hand in his, and drawing close to my heart, he kissed it. Then with both hands he clasped my head in his hands, keeping them upon my head for some time. Who can say what I felt being infused in me? He alone can say what he infused in me. Then he told me, "Daughter of my will fills you, and in order to keep this will of mine in you, I offer my very self as the keeper of my own will. The gift that I placed in you is so great that I do not want to leave it at the mercy of yourself, because you would not have sufficient care to keep it. Therefore, not only shall I be as defense, but I shall help you to make it pour outside in such a way that everywhere shall the imprint of my will be seen." Then afterwards he added, "The one who lives in my will must be as center of everything. Look at the sun up high in the heavens. One can see the center of the light, its circumference. But the light and the heat that it spreads beat and fill the whole earth, making themselves life and light of all nature. In the same way, the one who lives in my will must live as though circumfused in my own center, that is, life of everything. These souls are more than sun. They are also light, heat, and fecundity of all goods. So those who do not live completely in my will can be called plants, flowers, trees that receive light, heat, fecundity, and life from these suns. And living down below, they are subject to growing and decreasing, exposed to winds, to frost, to storms. On the other hand, the one who lives in my will, like sun, excels over everything, triumphs and conquers everything. And while he touches everything and makes himself life of everything, he is untouchable, nor does he let himself be touched by anyone, because since he lives up high, no one can reach him." June 28th, 1921. The souls who live in the divine will do whatever God does. True reigning is to not be excluded from anything created by God. I was pouring all of myself into the divine will, and my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, the souls who live in my will are the reverberation of everyone and of everything. And since they are reflected in everything, as a consequence, they receive the reverberation of all. And since my will is life of everything, in my will they run to give life to everything. So even inanimate things and plants receive their reflections, and they receive the reflection of all creation. They harmonize together with all things created by me. In my will they give to all. They are friends and sisters with all, and receive love and glory from all. My will renders them inseparable from me, and therefore whatever I do, they do as well. My will does not know how to do things that are dissimilar from me. The kingdom of my will is to reign. Therefore all of them are queens. But true reigning is to not be excluded from anything created by me." July 14th, 1921. Just as the sun forms the life of all nature, the divine will forms the life of souls. My will was swimming in the eternal volition, and an incomprehensible light made me comprehend and told me, "My daughter, for the one who lives in my will, it happens as to the earth that is exposed to the sun. The sun, king of all creation, dwells above everything. and the whole of nature seems to beg from the sun that forms its life, its beauty, its fecundity. The flower begs from the sun its beauty, its color, its fragrance, and as it goes on blooming and opening, it opens its mouth to receive from the sun the heat and the light, in order to be colored and perfumed, and to form its life. The plants beg from the sun maturity, sweetness, flavor. All things beg their life from the sun. My will is more than sun, and as the soul enters into its burning rays, she receives life. And as she keeps repeating her acts in my volition, she receives now my beauty, now my sweetness and fecundity, now my goodness and sanctity. So each time she enters into the rays of my will, so many more divine qualities she receives. Oh, how many varied beauties! How much liveliness of colors! How many fragrances she acquires! If these souls could be seen by the other creatures, they would form their paradise on earth, so great is their beauty. They are my reflectors, my true images. July 20th, 1921. Simile of Water and the Divine Will. Continuing in my usual state, I was feeling very much embittered, and was saying to myself, "Your will alone is left to me. I have nothing else. Everything has disappeared." And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, my will is all that must be left to you." It is symbolized by water. While it appears abundant in the seas, in the rivers, in the wells, the rest of the earth appears as if there were no water. Yet there is not one point of the earth that is not soaked with water. There are no buildings in which water has not been the first element in order to build them. There is no food in which water does not hold its primary place. Otherwise it would be arid food that man could not even swallow. The strength that water contains is such and so great that if it had free field to go out of the bounds of the sea, it would devastate and terrify the entire earth. My will is more than water. It is true that in certain points, epochs, and circumstances, it is as though imbounded within most extensive seas, rivers, and wells. But there is not one thing, from the greatest to the smallest, in which my will does not run, and does not hold its primary place, but as though hidden, just as the water is hidden in the earth, such that, although it does not appear, it is the one that makes the plants vegetate and gives life to the roots. However, when my love shall make the era of my will arise, the new era of the maximum benefit toward creatures, then shall the seas, the rivers of my volition, overflow, and as its gigantic waves come out, they shall overwhelm everything into my will, but no longer as hidden. Rather, its roaring waves shall make themselves seen by all and shall touch all. And those who want to resist the current shall run the risk of losing their lives. Now, since my will alone is left to you, you are like water that holds the primary place over all goods and in all things, both in heaven and on earth. And when my volition shall come out of its bounds, your will, disappeared within mine, shall have its primacy. What more do you want? You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 13, Part 1. Fiat.